Folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for coming out on Tuesday evening to learn more about money and how you guys can spend your money on your students. I'm Jessica Smith. I'm one of the full-time counselors here at the high school. You probably saw Karen Boyd on your way in. She's our other full-time counselor, so she'll be joining us as soon as she stops playing gatekeeper out there. So we're happy to have you guys here with us tonight. Tamika Ruffin, she is our regional rep with CFNC, which is the College Foundation of North Carolina, which is such a phenomenal resource for our students in the state, not just for college planning and college searching, but also kind of learning about how what an investment education is. So they're just a great resource all around. We use them from middle school through high school. So we're lucky as a state to have that as a resource. And we're going to speak to you guys tonight about some of those resources.
So good evening, everybody. So you are live out there. My name is Tamika. I do, of course, work with CFNC. This is my 12th year working with CFNC, but prior to doing this, so I have worked in financial aid and admissions in public and private institutions. So I can definitely answer any of the questions you have about this process. We'll go ahead and get started. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I don't know, can everybody see the screen okay? Okay, good. I don't want to dim the lights and y'all go to sleep. I know it's late in the day. But hopefully you can see it okay. One of the things that I do like to kind of just be sure that I mentioned, should I turn this on again? Yeah, it was working 8 minutes ago, right? Let me go on this. Okay, so one of the things you told you about the website, of course, so a lot of the information we're going to give you is going to be on the website. So when you go back tonight, you just kind of want to get some more information, definitely visit the site. All the information on there is free. We just try to provide as much as we can for people who live here in North Carolina, regardless of whether or not you're planning to go out of state or stay in state and go to college. All of this information will be relevant to you. One of the main things that I always like to kind of start out with is just to make sure that you are clear on the costs that are associated with going to college. Most of you, if you've gone to college yourself or if you sent a student to college before, you know that you have to pay for things, certain expenses. The things on the left-hand side are the things I tell people that you want to have as your first or primary concern. Because those are going to be the things that the college is going to send you a bill for. So if you're planning to visit colleges, if you're visiting colleges already, you just want to be clear on exactly what the expenses are to go there for a year. You know that you're going to have to pay for tuition and fees. All colleges will at least tell you that amount. Sometimes they'll say their tuition is this, and most people aren't thinking that they're clear on what it is. But usually you just want to be sure that tuition, whenever they say our tuition is this, they're just talking about the classes. They're not talking about as if your students are living there on campus and eating there on campus. You want to clarify with them when they say tuition, does that also include for them to live and eat here for a year? Because that's what they're going to send you a bill for. The other thing that you'll want to see on here, most schools are going to bill you probably twice a year. So whatever they tell you it is for the year, that will be cut in half. And you'll get that first bill, you'll pay for that fall semester, and then they'll bill you again at the end of the fall for the spring semester. So it's typically split in half. Now that's the stuff you're going to get a bill for. The stuff on the right, though, from the colleges, you're not necessarily going to get a bill from them, but there'll be expenses that you'll still have to pay for when it comes to going to college for a year. So I always tell people to at least consider these things. The books and supplies, of course, students will need books, whatever books they're going to need for class. Depending on how far your student is going to have to get into college, things may have changed. Right now, on average, students are probably spending anywhere between about $500 to $800 per semester for their books. It really depends on your student's major, what kind of books they need for their classes, and what they're going to be taking. The reason why I say it may change is because a lot of schools are going to downloadable options. So students are not necessarily having to buy a book or even rent a book for an entire semester. They may download a book for maybe a week or 2 weeks or however long that they need it. So you're paying for a book by a week or 2 weeks. So that may reduce the cost of books drastically depending on how many schools and how fast schools start doing that downloadable option for students. A lot of the larger public schools are doing that already, but as the years go on, it will definitely be more schools that will be added to that list. But you do want to keep books and supplies in mind. if you do have a student starting within the next year or 2 years, you do also know if you can go to websites like Amazon and things like that and try to find those books cheaper. I always encourage families to do that you do not have to buy the books on that school's campus. You can buy them wherever you find them cheaper. So if you know some online websites where you can get cheap textbooks, you definitely want to go there and see if you can find them cheaper. You also want to consider transportation costs for schools. All the colleges now, especially the four-year public colleges, students have to purchase their parking permit separately. So you pay the bill, tuition fees, room and bills. Your student brings their car. You also have to purchase a parking permit. Right now, students are spending anywhere between $400 to $500 a year for their parking permits. So it will depend on, again, where they decide to go. A lot of the private colleges will tell you that their parking is free, but nothing is free. You have paid for that parking at that private school. So they will tell you, though, that parking is free at the private schools. If your student is going to an out-of-state school and they are going to have to travel a good distance, go ahead and keep in mind what those travel expenses will be. So are they going to take a car? If they're not, what's the average cost right now for bus, plane, train tickets to go from that college back to your home? They'll at least have to do that a couple of times a year, and that'll be an additional expense you didn't have before. So you want to think about transportation costs when it comes to going to college. The other thing will be those personal and miscellaneous expenses. Those are the things that right now you guys are sharing at home. All the bathroom items, laundry items, all of that stuff you share. I do usually tell parents this is when students will start to appreciate you, is when they go to college. Because then that's when they realize they own nothing, right? They have to call you for toothpaste if they need toothpaste. So all those kind of like little everyday items. You do want to kind of think about that. I do tell families as they get closer to that senior year, a lot of people are going to be asking you what do they want for graduation, what do they need. Ask for gift cards to places like Walmart, Target, Sam's, Costco, wherever it is you buy those everyday items, so that can be an expense you don't have to worry about to kind of keep paying throughout the year. All those little things that add up through the year. But those are going to be some things you'll also want to make sure that you think about. A lot of the four-year colleges now, really all of the four-year colleges do ask that your students are covered under some type of health insurance. If, for instance, you say that you want to try to take, let's say when they graduate, you're kind of hoping to maybe take them off your health insurance plan. Four-year colleges do require that they stay covered while they're living on campus. If they're not covered, they have to purchase health insurance through that college or university. So as you're talking to the schools, you can at least ask them about their health insurance plans. Some families do choose to switch their student to the college's plan because it's cheaper. So whatever you have them covered under, now you just want to kind of compare it to your current plan. They can typically use them on campus and off campus. When students get sick when they're in college, they don't go off campus. They go to that student health center on campus. And a lot of times if they have that college's plan, they may not have to pay certain co-pays. It may be things that are cheaper if they are using the college's plan over your own. So at least look at it, see whether or not it would be comparable to keeping them on that plan. But these are expenses you definitely want to look about and ask colleges about individually, about on average what students are spending for these things, because those will be the things you'll be paying for every year. We do have a program, we always have to make everybody aware of a program we have in North Carolina called North Carolina Promise. It was just started about 2 years ago. And basically how We Promise works is that there are certain colleges that have agreed to try to make their schools as affordable as they possibly can right now. So there's two parts to the We Promise. The first part of it says that there are 3 colleges in North Carolina that have guaranteed that their tuition will be set at $500. So that means that if you've ever sent a student to college before, you know that tuition typically goes up every year a little bit, anywhere between 3 to 6% every year. What they're telling you is that the tuition will stay at $500. You still would have to pay for room and meals, but the tuition will be set at $500. The 3 colleges right now that are a part of that part of the promise are Western Carolina, UNC Pembroke, and Elizabeth City State University. So those are the colleges that are part of that part of it. The second part of We Promise is that all the public colleges, all the UNC colleges, any of the public colleges here in North Carolina guarantee that their tuition will be locked in for 4 years. So if your student was to get admitted to any of our public colleges, you'll be locked into that tuition for 4 years. Again, tuition typically goes up, so usually people have to pay a larger amount than they did when the student first came in as a freshman. This just guarantees that they have 4 years to graduate. If they do not graduate in 4 years, then the tuition will go up to whatever it should have gone up to over those 4 to 5 years. But that's the second part of We Promise. If you want to kind of know more about the We Promise program, or you have a few more years before your student goes to college and you want to see if there's anything that's been added to the program or taken away from it, you can also just visit the website. You can Google We Promise North Carolina. The web address is kind of right here at the bottom, and it's in red, so I don't know if you can see it very well, but if you just Google We Promise, you will see all the details, and it'll take you to that website. So again, this is just kind of something that happened a couple of years ago through North Carolina. We always also like to make sure that you're kind of aware of where the college costs are going. So depending on how much longer your student has to go to college, when they're going to start college, what are the current costs for colleges now? This is kind of where they are right now for any of our public schools in North Carolina, private schools, out-of-state public schools, and on average, out-of-state private schools, what the costs are right now. Again, what we're estimating is, of course, is that tuition is going to go up anywhere between 3 to 6%. This is actually done at 5%. So that's the reason why it's so important when I talk about tuition being locked in, because you can see what it looks like if the tuition is not locked in, how tuition goes up every year. And that's typically how it works. If you're ever visiting a college and you see a lot of construction, you can already know when your student goes there, it's not going to be that price that it quoted to you when you went to go visit. One of the things you'll be able to see is just to get an idea of what it looks like. We also just like to let people know exactly, where the costs of colleges are going. These costs do include tuition, fees, room, meals, the average cost for books, and the average cost for transportation is what we have quoted up here for the cost, so that you can get an idea of where it's going. And again, when you're on the college campuses, they will have all of their information listed on their websites, so it's not private. You kind of have to dig a little bit for it, but usually under their financial aid page, they will have what their cost of attendance is to go there for a year. So a lot of people usually ask us, well, how are people paying those figures for students to go to college? So we usually like to we do try to do surveys here in North Carolina every couple of years to kind of find out how are people paying for college. Let us know how you're paying for school. And so these are the ways right now that we typically hear people say that they're actually paying for college. A lot of people, of course, are saying that they have tried to save something in advance, meaning that they probably have some type of college savings program, that they're trying to put some money aside for college. So that's what that saving in advance is. A lot of students now are choosing to get college credit while they're in high school. So I don't know all the options that you have here, the opportunities you have here, but here in North Carolina right now, about 60% of the students who graduate from high schools here have graduated with some type of college credit. Either they are going through taking classes while they're in high school at the community college, or they're going through a Career and College Promise program. Do you guys participate in Career and College Promise?
We do.
You do? Yeah. So Career and College Promise program usually starts around the junior year, and basically the student has a potential to earn up to at least a year's worth of college credit, if not more. Students have to be very aggressive, though, when they're going through this program and make sure that they can handle it, because they're still taking their normal high school courses, but then they're also taking classes at the community college. So the most that we see students graduating through Career and College Promise across the state is about a year's worth, or a little bit less than a year's worth of credit if they go through the Career and College Promise. Again, the benefits of it is, let's say your student does graduate with a year's worth of college credit. That's a year that you don't have to worry about paying $24, $45, whatever it costs to go there for a year if they're going in with a year's worth of college credit. So that's one of the reasons why we're loving the fact that most families are realizing that you can save a lot of money if those students can take those classes while they're in high school for free. The other thing is of course, some students are choosing to go to those early college high schools now, so some students are going that route. There are different ways, depending on your school, that you can get college credit while you're in school, so you definitely want to take advantage of those opportunities. That's how people are saving or paying for college. The students have done this. The other thing that they're doing is that they're using their current income. So that just means that all the colleges now have a payment plan option. So they will allow you to, whatever you owe them, to spread that out over payments. So some people are using payment plans to kind of pay the bill. The other thing is of course, families are applying for financial aid, meaning they're trying to get scholarships and grants from the actual colleges to see what they're going to offer them to come. And then they're borrowing against future earnings, which is always a nice way to say that they are taking out loans, right? So parents are taking out loans, students are taking out loans. The average student loan debt right now is about $27,000, $28,000 for students. That goes to a four-year institution, that's the average. But it could vary definitely a little bit more than that, depending on the school that they go to. But that's the average. But this is kind of how people are paying for school now. Nobody is using one source. And this is what I want you to kind of get that mentality if you have not gotten there already. That you're just hoping and praying, I know that you are, because every family that I come across says we're hoping they're going to get a full scholarship. We're hoping that they're going to get a full athletic or a full academic scholarship. And every single parent, I don't care what you think your student is academically or athletically, that's what you're hoping in the back of your mind. But this is how people are really paying for school. So, yes, sir.
What's the average sticker versus real cost?
So that's good to know, because so they'll give you the real sticker price, but it'll depend on the school and what your actual cost is. So depending on how much that particular school can offer you to come there will tell you what the actual price is. There are some schools that can cut it down as low as where you might just be coming out of pocket with 20 or 30% of what it would cost to go there. There are some schools where you'll be coming out of pocket with 60 or 70% to go there. It will depend on the school. What I always advise people to do is to have your students, encourage your students to apply for multiple colleges. The way that people go to college with the least amount of debt is that they have college options. They don't go into it saying, I only want to go here. What most students do is, I only want to go here. They don't have any options. We encourage students to apply to at least 3 to 5 different colleges, because every college is going to offer you something different. So that sticker price versus the actual price is going to be different from every school. If I had a student that was doing very well academically, I would have them apply to at least 5 to 10 different colleges. Because just because of their grades or test scores or grades, colleges may offer them smaller scholarships just because of that. So you do want to be sure that you're giving your student options when it comes to go to school, time for school. So when you're talking to them about college, try not to ask them, where do you want to go? Like, what are some of your top schools? So have them to be open to the process. We get in trouble, or you get in trouble when you say, where do you want to go? So they feel like they have to choose one. But you want to kind of keep it open, wait until you get those financial offers from the school, and then kind of have that discussion about where you're going. But again, it varies by different families. Most people are combining 2 or 3 or 4 of these things up here to make college work. That's usually what people are doing. There were some other things that people put on here that we did not put up here because we wanted you to know we do want you to retire one day. But there were some people, of course, that had put on there that they were kind of going into retirement accounts if they were able to take it out for college expenses. Some people were using their home equity loans as options. There were different ways, and most people were combining several different things to make college work. So I don't want you to think that you have to have one source to do that. If they get a full scholarship, great, but if they don't, there's different ways that you can make it work with different sources. You don't have to have one source to make it happen. So the other part of it that we kind of just want to show you up here is that these are the forms that people are filling out to actually get money from colleges. I'm not going into depth into either one of them because I know that you guys are in different ranges and levels of where you are in the process. But these are the 2 main forms that students fill out in order to get offers from colleges. So your student will go through that regular admission process or early admission process, whatever they're going to go through. And then they fill out the financial form separately. So they apply for admission, they fill out the financial form separately. This is when you guys become a part of the process. So the admissions applications, they're doing them on their own. But when they need parent information is when they're filling out the financial forms for colleges. The top one is the one that all colleges ask for. It's called a pre-application for federal student aid. That's the one that we encourage all students to do because, again, it is free to fill out. You're just basically letting the school know that we want to be considered for something. Let us know if we are eligible for anything to come to your school. That's the purpose of them. This is the website that you go to fill that out. The earliest that they'll let families fill that form out is October 1st of the senior year. So that's the earliest that you can fill out either one of these financial forms is October 1st of the senior year. The other form that's up here, this is the second financial form. Not all students have to do this when there are only select colleges that ask for this second financial form. We only have 5 here in North Carolina, so I'll name the 5 schools in our state that would ask for 2 financial forms. And you can kind of get an idea if your students are applying out of state, what type of colleges might would ask for this. But the second form in our state, we have Duke, Wake Forest, Elon, Davidson, and UNC Chapel Hill. So again, Duke, Wake Forest, Elon, Davidson, and UNC Chapel Hill, they requested their students do both of these forms to be able to get the best offer from their school. The first one is free again. The second one does cost about $25 to do. And depending on how many schools that you have to have it sent to, it will be prorated. So it may be more than $25. They don't require you to fill it out, but I highly recommend that if you're wanting one of those schools and they do ask for that form, that you at least submit it to them, because you're trying to get considered for the most money that you can. And the purpose of this second form is that most of the schools that ask for this, they have a lot of institutional money that they can give. But in order to be considered for it, they want to know a little bit more about your family. And so they have families to fill out this second form. If you want to know if your student's going out of state, if you want to know whether or not that out-of-state school does ask for the second form, you can just go to the College Board website. They're the people that do the SAT. So you should be kind of familiar with them, or you will be if your student hasn't gotten there yet. To register for the SAT, you go to the College Board website, because that's what they do. But they also do this College Scholarship Service Profile as well for colleges. So when you go to the College Board website, just look for CSS Profile. That's kind of the acronym that they use. And it'll show you all the colleges in the country that ask for it.
Do you have to fill out the FAFSA every year?
You do. That's a great question. So you will get to know them very well, because you have to fill them out every year. The first year is just kind of, that'll be the first year you'll do it, will be where you have to answer all the questions. The second years after that, you're just doing a renewal form. So you're kind of updating the form, but you do have to fill them out every year. Every October 1st, they ask the families to come back in and renew the form. So when they give you that first offer from that, it's just going to be for the first year of college. You come back in the next year so they can see what they'll offer you for the sophomore year. And you keep doing that every year.
Can you talk about how savings impact financial aid?
Yeah. So there are, you said, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Specifically, if you have an account in the child's name, a UTMA brokerage account, does that impact them, and just parental assets as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the questions I'm going to ask you,
I actually had that same question.
You had the same question, Sam?
I did, and I was wondering about the equity in your house.
Yeah, so some of the things they'll ask you on the form, they do ask you about your assets. So there's going to be questions on here about assets. One of the things they'll ask you about is, do you have a college savings plan? Do you have any kind of investments? What kind of investments do you have? They ask that for both. There's a parent section on both of these forms and a student section. So whatever's in the parent's name, you list all the assets, things you have for you as a parent. Whatever assets you have for the student, you list them over there. What I recommend is that they're going to ask, of course, do you have them, when they're looking at parent information, they're always going to make assumptions about any money that you put down that's in your name, because they know that you maybe have multiple children, maybe you're not planning to use all of whatever assets you have to report for that child, you're not planning to use it all for that year, so they make assumptions about your money. Typically, if you have a college savings account, it's only going to account for about a little bit over 5% of whatever you're calculating to be your family's need. Usually, and that's out of 100% of things that they're looking at. College savings accounts probably account for 5% if they're in the parent's name. If they're in the student's name, though, there are no assumptions that are made about anything that's in the student's name. It is that student. It can be used for them only, so they make no assumptions about anything that's in the student's name, any kind of investment account or anything. I can't advise you what to do financially, but I am just going to repeat it again. Whatever is in the student's name, will be accounted for anywhere between 30 to 100% of what the need is for that student. So usually, you just want to look at those things a little bit closer. Can we adjust some things out of this student's name before it's time to fill out these forms? Because whatever's in their name, again, it's going to be looked at 100% because of the fact that there are no assumptions that are made about their money. But they definitely will ask about them on the form, just depending on whether or not they're in the parent's name or the student's name. And she was asking about the home equity, like any of those type of things. Usually they're not going to ask you about the value of the home that you live in or anything like that, but if you have a vacation home, if you have a second home, they're going to ask you for the value of those type of things. And they're going to ask you for the asset value of it. So they're going to say, if you have a second home, what kind of debt do you owe on it? They're going to ask you to subtract whatever debt you owe on that second home or whatever it is, and then tell us what the value is after you subtract the debt of whatever you owe on it. But they will ask about second homes, not the primary home, but any kind of other homes or property that you have in your name. So, those are great questions that they will ask on the form. They do have downloadable apps now for, especially for that FAFSA form, they do have a downloadable app. This is something they started this year. So now you don't have to be at a computer to fill out this financial form. You can just download the app. You can be at work on your lunch break, and you can go to and fill out the form completely on your app. Students can actually download this to their phone, and you can download it to your phone. You guys can share the same kind of login for the app, where the student could fill out and answer their questions, and then you can answer your questions on your phone, and then hit submit from there. But this is something new, and it made it a little bit easier, and we're hoping it's going to make it a lot easier for people to actually get the form submitted. Because a lot of people felt like, well, I don't have time, I'm not at home, I can't fill out this form here. Now there's no excuse, right? Just download the app wherever you are. You can fill out this form. So you'll have that option to download the app. When you go to your app store, if you're getting close to that year and you want to download the app is called My Student Aid. So it's not called the actual form's name, it's called My Student Aid, and you will fill out the forms through this app here. So it is free to download on your phone. And just so you can see too, one of the things that we usually have a lot of people will ask is kind of what's the basic eligibility for those forms. These are the things that have to happen for a student in order to be able to complete the forms. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I am going to mention up here is that male students will have to register for selective service when they're filling out the financial forms for colleges. So when you get to, they'll ask whether or not your student is male or female. If they are male, one of the questions they will ask them is, are they registered for selective service? If they are 18, they're going to be required to register for selective service. If they're not 18 when it's time for you to do these forms, they will allow your student to not register until they turn 18. But if you want to continue to get the full offer or whatever they've offered you through filling out these forms, that male student will have to have registered for selective service. That is a requirement. That all the others may be a little bit more self-explanatory, but that one is a requirement for male students. A lot of questions that we get from parents is that, will they ever be able to do these financial forms without me as a parent? Like, so they go to school and they turn 21. Am I still required to put my information on as a parent? This is primarily the rules to it. A student would have to answer yes to one of these questions up here in order to be able to complete either one of those financial forms without parent information. So if you answer no to all of these up here, then as a parent, basically you're going to be entering in your information until that student turns 24 or until they go to graduate school. When they go to graduate school, that makes them independent, even if they're under 24. But for undergraduate students, if they're under 24 and you answer no to all these things up here, they're going to have parent income information when they fill out the forms. So we usually get asked about that a lot. The other question that we get asked from parents when it comes to the financial forms is, okay, I know I have to have a parent, but what parent has to be on there? If I have two parents in my house, two parents will always have to be on my financial forms. But if I just live with my mother, either because my parents are separated or divorced or they were never married, then the only person that I'm putting on the financial forms will be my mother, because that's who I primarily live with. But if my mother that I'm living with, she gets married, she gets remarried, I now have to include my step parent on the financial forms too. So it's either two biological parents, single parent, or a parent and a step parent that has to be included on the financial forms when that student submits them to the school. So you might have a question about the parent info as far as what parents have to be on there. Okay? So that's kind of every year that they're filling it out. The reason why parents are you're going to be required for these forms, and I just want to get you prepared, is remember I said they're going to ask you for your income, they're asking you for your tax information. So each year that you fill it out, this is why you have to fill it out every year, because they know your income can change. And so they're going to ask for your tax information every year that you fill it out. They do have a new rule now that they will allow you to use your prior year taxes. So for students, let's say I have a student who's going to be a senior this coming up year. They'll be a senior starting in September. If I'm a parent, I'm going to start filling out my financial forms in October 1st. I'm going to be putting on there my 2018 tax information, so the tax season that we just went through. So it's always going to be that year prior taxes that I'm going to be putting on there. So what I encourage families to do when you're doing your taxes is to keep them, especially once your student gets, as they're getting closer to filling out those financial forms, and every year that they're in college, because you're going to need them to fill out the form. And you're going to need to get them done on time, right? But they're giving you until October 1st to get your prior year taxes done. So you'll have until that date to get them done. And that's one of the reasons why they allow people to start using their prior year taxes, because people were saying they were getting their taxes done later, they have businesses, they have a lot of information, so they're giving you at least until October 1st to get your taxes done for the prior year so that your student can submit all the forms. But that's what the information is required from parents. The other questions will just be individual questions that you'll be able to answer, outside of the tax return. It'll go into your assets, which we were talking about before. Those are the primary reasons why you're going to be on there. Does anybody have a question about your financial information?
Well, just back to the parent, it has to be the parent that the children are living with. It can't be less the other parent.
No, it has to be. It is a parent that they're living with over 50% of the time. Yeah. The other parent is not excluded though, so when you get that bill, they're still involved, right? This is just though to get the financial forms completed. But I know what you were asking for. If the person has a lesser income, you can use theirs. But yes, whatever parent I primarily live with. When you fill out those financial forms, this is what you're actually applying for. So most people say, should we even do them? I heard that if we do them, we don't qualify for anything. What's the qualifications for it? We encourage everybody to fill them out because one of the things that you are applying for, you are applying for federal money, which federal money is very need-based, meaning that it's going to be looking at your family's income primarily solely to offer you any federal money. But those are the federal programs you're being considered for. You're also going to be considered for North Carolina money. So you're a resident of North Carolina, every state has money they try to offer students to go to college. When you fill out those financial forms, you're applying for those. But the big thing that you're applying for is your institution's money. And so that's what varies by institution. So when people ask me, should they fill it out, I'm going to tell you yes every time. I don't care what your income is. Because again, you're trying to be considered for as much money as you can. Families that don't fill this out, yeah, you may not qualify for federal money, you may or may not qualify for state money, but that college's money, you don't know what they have. That money that they have through that college is set by whoever donated that money. So I could be a donor who donated money. I don't care what your income is. I do care what your student's major is. I do care what your students, where they're from. So I may say I want a student from Mecklenburg County who's majoring in engineering. That's who you would give this scholarship money to. But you would never get that money though if you haven't filled out any of those financial forms that they're asking you for. Because what they say is if you don't fill out the financial forms, you don't need anything. So if you would have needed anything, you would have asked for somebody through this financial process, or at least being considered for it. So I always encourage people every year, I don't care of your income, to fill this form out just to see what they're going to offer you to come to that student's school. So again, yes, I want you to fill it out, and this is what you're applying for when you do it. They do have loan options. This is currently what the loan limits are for students to be able to help pay for college. They do have limits for students. So let's say the student has been offered everything they can do in school as far as any money they don't have to pay back. They do offer the students the opportunity, if they'd like to be able to borrow money. The most a student can borrow their first year of college right now is $5,500, regardless of where the college is located or how much it costs to go there. The most they can borrow in a loan in their name through the college is $5,500. Their second year, $6,500. Their junior and senior year, $7,500. So that's the most they allow students to borrow. Students start paying the loans back 6 months after they graduate, or 6 months after they're no longer enrolled in college. So if they decide to go into graduate school, they'll stop the payments as long as they're enrolled in school.
I'm curious, when these loans are accruing, are they accruing interest? So if the student, under that far right column, if they were to borrow $31,000
Yeah.
and then they graduate, they're not going to grad school, do they just owe $31,000 flat, or they
That
owe?
would be nice. What they do is, that would be nice. So it depends on the type of loan the student gets. What I'll say for sure is you'll see those two. So the student is eligible for $5,500 their first year, but you see that that loan is split up between subsidized and unsubsidized. Typically, that's how it is for most students. If it says that it's a subsidized, that portion of the loan is subsidized, that means there is no interest on that loan while they're in school if it says that it's subsidized. The interest will start, though, 6 months after they graduate. But if it says that that loan is unsubsidized, or if any portion of that loan is unsubsidized, that means that interest is accruing on that loan while they're in school. They decide on who gets subsidized and unsubsidized based off of family's financial need. If they say that a family has no financial need through those financial forms, then they'll say that that student will get unsubsidized student loan money, meaning that there'll be interest on it while they're in school. But if they say this family does have a little bit of financial need, we'll give them a little bit of subsidized student loan money. So a portion of it may be not with that. But the amount that you see over here for subsidized, that's the most that they will allow students to be able to get in a subsidized loan, meaning there's no interest on it. So most students who take out the full amount, they're going to have a combination of both.
Can you give us just a ballpark of what the interest rates are?
Yeah, right now interest rate for student loans are at 5%. And then for parent loans, because I don't have that up here, but let's say you needed a little bit more, because they will say, well, a student can take out $5,500, but if you need more, you do have the option as a parent. We're not going to leave you out. As a parent, you can take out a loan. We call it a parent loan. You can take out a loan in your name as a parent. You have to go through a credit check process. If you're approved for it, you can get a loan in your name as a parent. The parent loans interest rates right now are around 6.5% for parents. But they do change every year. They do change every year. They are locked in for that 1 year. So if I took out a loan my freshman year for $5,500, it will always be at 5% for the life of that loan. But then if I come back next year, though, and I say I need to take out an additional $6,500 as a sophomore, then it will be at whatever the new interest rate is for that year.
And you said the unsubsidized amount is accruing interest from day one?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, it is. And interest rates can range, again, the last couple of years they've been between 3 and 5% is where they've been. They are capped at 8.25%, so they'll never go over 8.25%, but they can fluctuate between that every year, which is why they usually encourage students, families to consolidate loans when they graduate, because they will have several different interest rates on their loans when they graduate. And as a parent, if you did have to take out a parent loan, they will give you the option. You just have to call, but they'll give you the option to say, I don't want to make payments on that parent loan right now. Can I stop the payments while they're enrolled in school? And they'll let you do that. They'll let you stop the payments on a parent loan as long as the student is enrolled at least part-time. The interest on parent loans will never stop, though. So there is always interest accruing on the parent loans, regardless of where interest accrues.
How long do these loans typically amortize for the student? Like once they graduate, do they have a 5, 7, 10-year window they have to pay back?
They have it set up to be paid off in 10 years, is how they set up. But of course, as life starts to happen, they can turn it in 20 years, 30 years, because you can call and get payments reduced and those type of things. But they do have them set up to be paid off in 10 years. Any other questions about the laws? This is like the sad, depressing part.
It starts after 6 months, but is there a limitation of deferment?
Yeah, there is. So they'll give you 6 months, of course, but there are students, of course, after 6 months, maybe they couldn't find a job, maybe they couldn't afford to pay, to make the payments. They can always call. They won't get that 6-month increment again, but they can get months at a time. So they'll defer it for maybe another month or another 2 months if they call and they're not able to start making payments right away.
So it's not like a limitation, it's just, yeah, you start calling.
Right, right. And they usually give you a year. So even if it's like, a month here, a month there, they'll give you a year.
The interest is on then, right?
Yes,
It's on.
yes. Any other questions about that? Okay, so let's move on to a happier place. So then there's the scholarship piece of it, right? So one of the things you'll know is that students I do encourage students to apply for scholarships. And so if your students do have at least a year or more to go before they get to their senior year, this will be the time to research scholarship information. These are probably the top places we like to tell students to go look for scholarships. Local things should come here, but because of this school, I used to tell people at charter schools or different schools that are not the traditional public schools, to make sure that they are checking different high schools' websites. Because if I'm a small local business, I may not know that you exist. So I may send it to the high schools that are close by, the larger public high schools, but I might not know that you're here. So I would always tell people to check, local high schools' websites. You can always just go to their counselor page. So when you go to any high school's page, they usually have it under their counselor section or student services, is usually what it's under. But they'll have scholarship information there. The state scholarships are typically, we have as many as we can house on CFNC. So on CFNC.org, that's going to be where all of those state scholarships are, meaning that they have to be used in state. So if your student wants to apply for any scholarship on our website in particular, they have to go to a college or university in North Carolina. It could be a 2-year or 4-year, but it has to be here in North Carolina. And then, of course, all the colleges offer scholarships. So as you're visiting the colleges, wherever you're going to different schools, you definitely want to ask them questions about their institutional scholarships, what the deadlines are. What I will say with a lot of the institutional scholarships, students typically have to have been admitted to those schools, or they have to have at least applied. So that means that if you have a student who is probably competitive for larger scholarships at those 4-year institutions, they should be ready to go through that early admission process for those colleges, whenever that is. So that's typically between most colleges, August to like September, October. That's usually early admission time. So that means they have to be ready day 1 in senior year to start applying for colleges. They don't need to take the SAT again. They don't need to take the ACT again. They're satisfied with their scores. They want to go ahead and go through the early admission process, because a lot of those colleges have very early deadlines for their full scholarships, partial scholarships. Students have to have been admitted or applied by a certain date in order to even get considered for those type of scholarships. So you do want to ask the colleges when those deadlines are so that you're clear on how early they need to get those admissions applications into those schools if they want to be considered for that. I also mentioned to people too that community colleges offer full scholarships. So Central Piedmont offers several, almost I think about 200 full scholarships. It means it covers for tuition fees and books. So if your student decides to go to the community college first and then transfer to a 4-year school, do not omit that they offer scholarships as well for those 2 years that they will be there. Just have to go to the college's website and look for scholarships through the community college site. A lot of people are choosing to do that transfer option. Saves a lot of money. So if that is something that your student is considering, they offer scholarships there too. And then national scholarships are just doing scholarship searches on your own. A lot of the ways, the easiest ways to do those now are to go through your app store. A lot of websites now have scholarship apps. So I usually tell people to search through your apps and kind of download scholarship apps. Another way is through social media. So all of the scholarships now have websites, but now they're also seeing the best way to advertise to people are through social media sites. So like on Facebook or Instagram, whatever you use, you can go to the search box and maybe type in scholarship websites or scholarship sites. And they'll let you know Facebook pages, Twitter pages, Instagram pages that offer, where they're announcing their scholarships, the deadlines are coming up. So that's one of the ways now that they are advertising their websites or through social media sites. So use the search boxes on those to search for scholarship sites there. And you can also use Google as a great search engine as you're going through the process. The best thing that I tell you guys to do is to try to have somebody who's organized to help you through this process. Because especially if right now you're in the research stage, somebody at least needs to set up some type of spreadsheet or something that has the name of the scholarship and the date that it's due. Because every scholarship will have a different deadline, every single one that you find. And if you're not organized in some way, you will miss out on scholarship opportunities. And it also helps you to kind of declutter your mind. So you might have a page or 2 pages of scholarships you know your student can apply to. Instead of overwhelming yourself and that student, if you organize them by date that they're due, we're just focusing on the ones right now that are due in September. Those are the ones we're making sure we get done right now. Then we'll move on to the ones that are due in October. So it helps your student not to be so overwhelmed when they're looking at pages and pages of scholarships that they're going to have to apply to. Separate them by the month that they're due. It does help, especially for students who are overwhelmed their senior year, which they will be. So be stressing out about what colleges they're going to apply to, if they're going to get admitted. They're going to be stressing out about all the senior things they have to do. And so this helps them to kind of, if you say organize, it helps them a little bit. Because they do get overwhelmed. And once they get overwhelmed, they shut down. They don't fill out any applications. They don't do anything because they are overwhelmed. And this is not that important to them because they don't understand quite the importance of getting that scholarship money, but they do understand the importance of getting the other things done. So just make sure, because they think you guys are all millionaires, so they haven't really experienced what this process is really like. It's going to be like you buying another home. And I always tell parents, you have to prepare students for this because they're not used to you telling them no for a lot of stuff. This is also probably the largest purchase that you're going to be doing for them that you haven't had to kind of tell them no for some of the smaller things. So you want to make sure that you're having conversations about how important scholarships are in this process. Because they can't really rationalize it in their mind. You barely can wrap your hand around the cost of the colleges, so they cannot. So definitely keep talking to them and get on their nerves about applying for scholarships because again, they just don't get how important it is, and they know that if they don't get it, you're going to come up with it some kind of way. And you just want to always let them know how important it is for them to be a part of this process and to get scholarship money. So make sure that you are staying up with them on top of that. I work with a lot of high school students. I know their minds. And I tell you, they always say, well, I don't need to worry about that because my parents have that. They got to take care of it. I was like, oh, really? Do they know that? So you just want to be sure that you're staying on top of them.